This is America's Mayor, Talk with America's Mayor, which we're going to be on for the next hour. And you can text in and tell us what you're thinking, ask what you want to know. We may cut it a teeny bit short at the end and invite you to go on Newsmax, where we're going to do an interview on Newsmax to talk. I am quite certain about the just ballooning story of Biden and classified documents. You know, one wonders why people in glass houses throw stones, don't you? And gosh almighty, all the stones they were throwing at Trump on what is a rather phony case against Trump, not against Biden. If I can explain to you why. There are two different laws involved here. One is the Presidential Records Act. The Presidential Records Act has a number of duties and responsibilities and obligations that the president has. It also gives him certain rights with the papers. The ultimate custodian of the papers is the archivist of the United States. I think this was in the early 70s, and this was to settle whether Nixon owned his government papers so that he could do whatever he wanted with them. And basically, it was decided, no, the government owned the papers, but the president had certain rights to review them, to exclude things that the archivist agreed were personal, having to do with family, that sort of thing. So it's owned by the government, owned by the archivist as the custodian for the government. The president has substantial rights. Now, here's the important thing about that law, the Presidential Records Act. It has duties and obligations, but it has no penalties. In other words, the law doesn't say if you fail to violate it, you pay a $10,000 fine and go to jail for 2 years. It doesn't say anything about that. The law was passed after the laws had already been passed about the handling of government documents. Now, the handling of government documents have penalties for taking them home in certain cases, classified material, destroying them like Hillary Clinton did, mutilating them, changing them. And the two laws that apply most specifically carry prison sentences. If you recall correctly, one is 3 or 4 years and the other is, I don't know if it's 10, pretty high. But the first one carries something else with it that the Democrats were really interested in seeing if they could hook it on to the Presidential Records Act. Now, it's the Government Records Act, not the Presidential Records Act. And it says if you are convicted, you forfeit your public office and you can never hold public office again. So they were hoping to convict Trump of that so he couldn't become president, if it's constitutional, which many scholars from the time it was passed have doubted whether it's constitutional or not. But here's the difference. Trump is operating under the Presidential Records Act that contain no criminal penalties, and the crooked attorney general will have to find a way to convince the court that they should read in the penalties from the Federal Records Act into the Presidential Records Act, even though Congress could have done that and didn't. Congress could easily have picked up those penalties and put them right in there, 3 years out of office, never can have public office again. They didn't do it. Generally, criminal statutes are construed, we say strictly, meaning we don't create things about them that have been created by the legislature. So there's a very good chance that Trump is looking at a statute here with all the nonsense we've went through that contains no criminal penalties, because the law that he's operating under contains none. You've got to go find another law and attach it to this, which Congress very easily could have done and didn't. Now, let's look at Biden. Biden was not the president. Biden was the vice president. The reason the penalties don't exist for the president is they're kind of stupid, because The president gets to decide whether something is classified or not. So whether he mishandles it in some way, particularly if it doesn't in the hands of anyone else, but technically mishandles it or not, he can. I mean, presumably they're declassified, or he has declassified it. Vice president can't declassify a damn thing. He's just like any other government employee. So the penalties are much higher than their criminal penalties in jail, and they're also disqualification from public office. Now let's look at what they did. They actually did. They actually did things that were somewhat different that take you over into the category of gross negligence or intentional conduct. Trump's people took his records from the White House in the normal process of taking certain records after you leave, going through them and deciding which ones are personal, which you're going to claim are yours, which not. And then the archivist finally decides. That's a normal process that presidents go through. I'm not even sure Obama has finished his yet, to tell you the truth. He was going to digitize them, and he hasn't. So they hold these records. Trump was holding them. He was holding them at a very secure facility called Mar-a-Lago. You cannot get into Mar-a-Lago just by walking past the numerous security people, both his own and the Secret Service given to him by the government. You can't just walk around into the private rooms of Mar-a-Lago. You'll be chased out in a minute. So, okay, it isn't as secure as the White House. Not too different. But it has a level of security that has to be recognized. That's where he had them. And he was cooperating with the government in giving them back and arguing with them over others, which is a process that he had every right to. How you make a crime out of that is only because you hate Donald Trump. But here's how you have now hung yourself on your own petard. Having done that in a lesser situation where there isn't even a criminal penalty attached to the statute, and in a situation where President Trump was considerably more careful than President Biden. But remember, Biden papers were given to some kind of a think tank. They're in an office building. Doesn't have the security of the White House or Mar-a-Lago.
Funded by the communists.
The organization was largely funded by the Chinese Communist Party. Mar-a-Lago is not funded by the Chinese Communist Party. And finally, the documents that they didn't tell us about, and they only told us about lately, were in his home. Not just in his home, they're in his garage with a lock. There's not a burglar in America that can't break a lock of a garage. And by the way, they weren't even in the car, locked in the car. They were out next to the car. Well, now we're talking about grossly irresponsible conduct. We're not talking about you got them at Mar-a-Lago, you got them in a special room. It's very hard to get into that place. It's impossible to walk around it freely. You got them in a garage. And the thing standing between getting exposed and not is the lock of a home garage. Sounds like Joe's got to get prosecuted. If Joe were in the military and took those home from work and put them there, he would go to jail for average sentence 5-6 years. Now we'll see. Let's see how, so far the double standard has withstood everything but murder. Largest bribes in American history, crime at the highest levels of government, selling out the country to Red China. He hasn't gotten even investigated for any of it. And look at the difference in treatment. They find out that he's got these documents and, they just accept them from the lawyers They don't go look at the other homes. If he was intentionally so irresponsible to leave them in a garage, what about the other places that he was at? Why are we relying on Joe and his lawyers? The FBI wouldn't even let Trump lawyers accompany them on the search. Here, the only ones who have done the search are Biden's lawyers. What I am describing right now is literally tearing this country apart. It's taking our much respected and admired system of justice, equal justice under the law. It's making a mockery of it. There's no one in this country that doesn't realize that since they fixed the case for Hillary Clinton, where she destroyed she violated this statute 33,000 times, but she destroyed the documents. That's even worse than anything that Trump or Biden did. She destroyed them. And she didn't get prosecuted. You could be sure if she were a Republican, she would have been. Republicans get prosecuted for jaywalking, usually by sending in people dressed like stormtroopers, scaring the living daylights out of their children. Look at those J6 people, the ones who trespassed at most or walked in at least. They get arrested like they're members of the Colombian cartel. The kids get traumatized basically for life when the FBI comes in dressed up like something from Halloween to arrest a white-collar, non-violent. There wasn't a single person on January that had a gun, no reason for it. Well, this is now a test. We were right there. It's right there. What kind of excuse they're going to come up with for demented, huh? What kind of excuse? What do you think, Ted? What are they going to say? I mean, you really have to search his other homes because you're gonna rely on him. You say, Joe, tell me where the other documents are. Do you think he has any idea where they are?
Mayor,
he's still working on trying to figure out that his father died 10 years ago.
What are the odds that there may be 2-3 dozens more locations? I mean, we got some in a closet. We got other documents in a garage. There's a third location. This isn't the end of it. And do you think, Mayor, there's a chance that the powers that be, the Democrat Party, the permanent Washington political class, they're thinking, okay, we protected this guy for this long. We can't do it much longer. Let's kick him to the curb. We need a new puppet, basically. We need somebody else, a new face to keep in power. Because if we're not careful, Donald Trump very well may make his way back into office.
Well, those documents have been sitting there for about 8 years. Nobody's said anything about them or done anything about them. Why
now?
Yeah, why now? Why right at the time that you're bringing the Trump thing to a crescendo? Number two, he's made some very odd statements lately that if you're a careful person and you get concerned easily, I'd be very concerned that he's going to go blotto pretty soon. I mean, this is twice in a row thinking that he had a conversation with his father at his inauguration and then gave his uncle a Purple Heart after his inauguration in the White House when he was vice president. They both were dead for 5 years by the time of his inauguration. Those are the statements of a person demonstrating delusions. They're not lies, particularly when he's told that it's wrong and he repeats it. He literally forgot that he was told that it was wrong. That's pretty advanced. And it's an illness where you just wake up one morning and you're not making any sense to anybody. I don't think they can stand that happening because there'll be much more blame put on them if that happens. There should be plenty of blame put on them, but I think, they escape it a little if he walks out based on some kind of an ethics violation with these classified records. And there's a rumor going around that Hunter's indictment is in the next couple of days.
We're
So
hearing
they-
that from numerous sources.
Yeah, so they indict him for spitting on the sidewalk, and he'll get sentence will be 3 days of cleaning the sidewalk. That'll be the whole. That'll be. I mean, he's obviously going to get indicted on some kind of a mild tax charge, when in fact he engaged in the biggest bribery scheme at the highest levels of two governments that I've ever heard of.
So, Mayor, what's also interesting is how this kind of came to revelation. This document find, the initial one at the Penn Biden Center, was initially leaked to NBC News, which is a legacy media outlet. And we know how a lot of the national security correspondence community at these outlets work, right? They're in some respects a tool of the national security state. For them to come out and report this, right? And then for the White House, it's the Biden's own White House to be involved. And for Merrick Garland to come out and say, look, we gotta appoint a special prosecutor.
That went through great lengths to cover up 30 years of documented massive crime, the hard drive. It is different behavior, isn't it? Which may indicate that the Democrat Party has given up on him and are worried that he is insisting on being the standard bearer and doesn't know, that his uncle's dead. It can be tough running for president under those circumstances. Even if you put him in a basement, he's a sitting president.
Yeah.
And every time he goes somewhere, he makes a fool out of himself. They're becoming legendary now. I mean, the last one he thought he was in. He thought he was in Colombia, and he was in Cambodia. He thought the prime minister was the prime minister of Colombia, not Cambodia. Made the mistake several times, even after being corrected. And I put a heavy emphasis on that because Joe's always been a very, very dumb man, and he does make a lot of mistakes. But if you corrected him, he had at least a retentive power to remember, oh, my father is dead. Something now is medically wrong with his brain, in addition to his being the dumbest kid in class.
Now, Mayor, I like to challenge my own thoughts and perspective on these things, right? Your initial reaction, it's, I think, a healthy exercise to do. Is there a possibility that Biden and his own team think this stuff's going to come out? It's best to come out now. Look, they did better in the midterms than they thought, but the GOP has taken over the House. If there's a time to get this out, it's now. We're still, 2 years out. It gives us some time. We know how the news cycle is. Is that a possibility?
Sure, it's a possibility.
And it's like, look, this stuff, let's not let them use this 2 months before the election, right? Let's get it out now. It's silly. We don't know why Joe had these documents in the garage next to the Corvette.
But
between the paint cans and the shovels.
It does really preclude them from proceeding against Trump. If they were to indict Trump now and not indict Biden, God Almighty, they would have. I can't imagine how you justify that to anybody.
They might be
even with the people hating Trump. I mean, Trump did far less than Biden did, and he had the documents under a better state of security.
Quite a few levels of security as someone who's been to.
And he had a much better reason to have them. He was going through a transition, and okay, maybe a little slow on going through them. I don't. I mean, they've gotten away with everything so far, so it's not impossible. But if they indicted one and not the other, I think it would even damage us in the world. We would then have a notoriously obvious fascist legal system.
And I am surprised in it. I want to know what Merrick Garland's thinking tonight. Pleasantly surprised.
He probably called his son-in-law to see how much money they made trying to alter the gender of little children, which is what the business his son-in-law is in. So I would think he's worried about the bottom line, which is how much dough are they making while he's beating up on women who are trying to help their children from not being unnecessarily
Absurdity.
confused by the difficulties of being a child and sex. His son-in-law is raking it over the coals, teaching kids things like, "Are you sure you really are a boy? We got to examine that." That's his business. No one points that out because we have, as I said, a fascist system. Even the so-called right-wing press doesn't bring that out. Maybe they think it's a little too sensitive. I don't know. Just like they never bring out the statement that 50% for 30 years, 50% of everything that Hunter owned went to Joe. I mean, that you would think that would answer the question of was Joe getting the money. And by now, the bank accounts would all have been examined. The records would have been collected, and nothing's been done. I mean, it's not even been accepted as a matter for investigation, much less way beyond that with proof in their own hand.
Mayor, is there a chance that the Mar-a-Lago raid was done because people within Biden world knew about these documents? It was going to come out eventually. So let's take action against Trump. We have enough where we can show that this sort of document situations, it's gray enough where we can put this out there and at least muddy the waters. And then when the stuff comes out against Biden, the response will be, they'll be more critical about Biden going after Trump. Then they'll be critical about Biden having state secrets in his garage next to the old paint cans.
Anything could be possible. I don't think that that's the case.
Okay.
But anything could be possible. We just don't know. It's a very odd, very strange, bizarre set of circumstances. So anything could be possible. Trump is going to have his first campaign event in South Carolina very shortly. They didn't give the exact date, but the governor of South Carolina, Henry McMaster, has already endorsed him. Henry is a former colleague of mine in the Justice Department and a great guy.
I'm sorry, endorsed?
President Trump.
Okay.
And he's going to have his first event in South Carolina maybe this month. They didn't supply the date of it. It'd be interesting to see how having spoken to him at great length, I know he's in good spirits and very, very much sound mind, nothing like Biden, of course. But it'd be interesting to see
and that could be part of this,
how
Mayor.
the rallies go, because those rallies, if they're like they were in 20 or in 16, those rallies are an enormous political weapon for him.
And that's right, Mayor. That could be part of it. They see how vibrant, how full of energy, calm, cool, and collected President Trump is. And then they see who they have, and they're like, okay, this isn't going to go well in 24.
Yeah, let's listen to a little of this, because sometimes, I believe they lie so much, and I like to give you this as much as possible. I think you'll notice that with my podcast also. I like to give you the source material as much as possible so that you can make up your own mind about things and see that the things that I'm saying to you are based on fact, not like, Russian collusion or Russian disinformation or that kind of stuff. So Ducey, you remember Biden back on 60 Minutes sometime sometimes was it during the campaign or was it after the campaign? No, it had to be after the campaign, because it was when all this came out. Biden was very critical. Yeah, we can listen to some of that. Biden was very, very critical of Trump.
When you saw the photograph of the top secret documents laid out on the floor at Mar-a-Lago, what did you think to yourself looking at that image?
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible. And I thought, what data was in there that may compromise sources and methods? By that, I mean names of people who helped or et cetera. And it's just totally irresponsible.
Amazing, isn't it? Wow. Amazing. So Peter Ducey picks up on that immediately.
How could anyone be that irresponsible? Isn't that what this president says about mishandling classified documents?
The president spoke to this personally. He spoke to this personally, and he believes that classified documents and information should be taken seriously. He takes them seriously, and he was surprised to learn by any records. I disagree. Here's what happened once his. Well, let me explain to you the process. Here's what happened when his lawyers found out that the documents were there. They immediately turned them over to the archives.
But they
immediately turned them over to the archives. I'm not gonna go into specifics, but what I'm reiterating to you is what you heard from the president.
How can you answer it if you don't go into specifics? It is about specifics, isn't it? I mean, I don't know how that woman is able to do that every day and lie like that. How did you deteriorate your conscience? I mean, so then he follows up with a logical question to the mouthpiece.
How can President Biden be trusted moving forward with America's secrets?
Because his lawyers, his team did the right thing.
But he had a closet with
His
classified
lawyers
information in
did
it.
the right again. He was surprised that the records were there. He spoke to this personally. He was surprised that the records were there, and when his lawyers found out and his team found out that they were there, they turned it over to the archives, and now it's being reviewed by the Department of Justice.
You know, there's nowhere in this law where it says you're allowed to take the records if you're surprised they're there. It's the taking of the records and the putting them in an insecure situation that does the damage to the national security of the United States. He's going to tell the jury, well, it was okay for me to do that because I wasn't sure they were there. I mean, that's because he's got dementia that he wasn't sure. He's not sure who he is, much less where they are. This is getting to be sick. Why is it getting to be sick? This is sick. This is sick. Now let's listen to the fake news who ripped Trump apart for much less than this. Let's listen to them fawning all over their creation. Joe Biden. This is what happens when you're totally dishonest.
Joe's team made a mistake. He admitted to it. Ordinarily, this is the type of thing. It's not a crime. It's a mistake unless there's a criminal intent. You see no criminal intent here.
There is no comparison. They were in a locked closet. They were not accessible. And that's why the appropriate process was followed.
Well, what about the ones that were just lying out there, big mouth, that were next to the Corvette? Or what was it? Whatever the heck it was, whatever kind of car he had. Just lying out there to be taken by anybody who could get into the garage. That's not a locked box. What is he talking about? A lock box. They just got, see, Democrats just lie and lie and lie and lie. And it's my job to catch them.
Biden documents were found in a locked closet. They were found by lawyers who immediately notified the White House. And on the same day, the White House notified the National Archives. And, these cases do happen. People do mistakenly take documents.
And the people who do go to jail, ma'am. And they weren't just taken. They weren't just taken. They were taken 7 and 8 years ago. And they've been sitting in situation of insecurity for 7 or 8 years. Trump's situation was he just got out of the White House. They knew where they were. They were in a building that's very secure. as secure as the White House, and they were negotiating about which ones had to be returned and when. If this is not treated roughly the same way, then you can say that we've gone over the line, and the express train to Marxism has been in the station. It's going through the station, and it's on its way to totalitarian communism. I mean, this is just absurd, just absurd. Well, some good news is that U.S. Navy veteran Taylor Dudley was released from Russian custody, and looks like Elliot Richardson. I mean, Elliot Richardson, the former Attorney General who got fired, but Bill Richardson was involved in it, and I know Bill, working with the Iranian dissidents, takes this very, very seriously. But he helped get this Navy veteran out of Russian custody, Taylor Dudley. Congratulations. And that's, I think, a wonderful, wonderful thing. And the whole situation with our airlines just completely shutting down, like it was 9/11, because the NOTAM system wasn't working. Sounds a little fishy, doesn't it? I'm not saying it's not true. I'm just saying you have a right to be somewhat skeptical about it. It's a system to alert pilots to things they have to be careful about the best way I can describe it. And therefore, you can't take off without going through it and having it. So they figured out the other morning, very early, that there are a certain number that had, in fact, almost all, no one had been briefed, I guess. The machine went down. So nobody could fly until that was rectified. And that had everyone standing down for about 6-7 hours and not being able to go anywhere. The planes in the air could go to their destination and land, but they had to remain there. So we were on terrorist shutdown. But it was caused, they say, by this glitch. Now, was it hacked? Wasn't it? Those are all things that we have to look at and not just take for granted that it was one big giant accident. It may have been one big giant accident, but let's find that out rather than just say it. People have a right to push and to find out more and more about this. This is a very serious thing, and if it is some kind of a thing from the outside, we darn well better know about it. So I also want to point out that the podcast that I have out right now is one that goes back a bit in time, but it is very, very relevant to what's going on. But I'd also be really, really interested in your views on the podcast that I did a couple of days ago at the animal education center, and we did an interview with Franklin the monkey, and we'll have Franklin back, particularly as he grows a bit. Franklin, if you remember, had been taken in by the Calebs as just a month ago as a newborn, extremely 1 pound, and wouldn't eat, and had all kinds of illnesses. And in 1 month, the monkey has been brought back to health, and it's just a really great little a great little monkey. Never had a relationship. Never had a relationship with a monkey before. Had a couple of dog best friends, but no, not a monkey before.
Thanks for joining us, America's Mayor Live with America's Mayor Rudy Giuliani on a very busy news night. Comment below who you are, where you're tuning in from. Also visit GiulianiCS.com. That's RudyGiulianiCS.com. And Mayor, what does the CS stand for?
Common sense.
And of course, thank you for joining us, the fastest hour on the internet. And Mayor, now may be a good time for us to highlight tonight's sponsor, Big John's Moving. We have across the ticker at the bottom of the screen, you can see how to, the website and the phone number to call. Just follow our ticker and you will see more about Big John's Moving.
Well, I've used Big John, so I can tell you as a satisfied customer that they can move you more efficiently, more effectively, and with little or no damage, more than any I've ever used, and I've moved a bit in my life. And now they specialize in moves from New York to Florida or similar points, and they have specialists who work on that. And they do something that most others, they don't hand your furniture off. So the same crew that takes it out of your house in New York or New Jersey or Connecticut or whatever is the same crew that arrives in Boca, right, and unloads it. So that means you don't have multiple loading and unloading, and therefore more and more opportunities for scratch, damage, and losing things. Also, these people have all worked Big John for bare minimum 20 years, some of them 30, 35 years. They're extremely loyal people, trustworthy and loyal people. We have the phone. You have to do this by phone. I mean, you can go to bigjohn.com and you can get lots of information about them. But if you want to make a reservation, you want to give them the phone number, Ted?
Yes, I would love to give the phone number. If you're reading the bottom of the screen right now, you can check out Big John's Moving at www.bigjohnsmoving.com or call 212-734-3300. That's 212-734-3300 to schedule an appointment or to get a free quote.
734-3300.
3300.
3300. 212-734-3300.
That's right. So if you're in the New York area and planning to move, or maybe even a number of other locations, go to bigjohnmoving.com
We should have
to get a
Big
free
John
quote
on
today.
sometime and have him explain to you the land office business they've been doing based on the Democrats chasing people out of New York and New Jersey.
And one more thing, Mayor, of course, when you're supporting Big John's Moving, you're also supporting everything Mayor Rudolph W. Giuliani is doing in his fight to save this country. So not only are you doing good for yourself in the move, but you're also supporting the most worthy of causes.
So we've got a new special prosecutor now. I don't know him. I don't know his background. I don't know. I guess I'm going to do some research on him overnight. Give you some ideas from what he's done. He was an assistant U.S. attorney for I can't remember, was it 8 or 11 years. Then he was U.S. attorney. That's a good background for what he has to do. I'd like to see some of the cases that he prosecuted. And is he a straight lawyer, or is he like the Mueller Democratic clowns that he had, who had no regard for the Constitution, the president's right to counsel, or any of these things. Representative Chip Roy, who I think you might remember from the vote on the speaker, because he was at 1.4, then against, and then for McCarthy. He has introduced a bill to block illegal immigrants for coming in, to stop them at the border. And and also he is arguing that Biden should be impeached for failing to carry out his constitutional duty of ending the invasion of the United States. I mean, there's so many reasons that Biden could be impeached. I have a feeling if they impeached him, the Democrats would tell him to step down. I don't think the guy. He gave away an air base to China, and he got $31 million from them. I gotta be a genius to figure that out. You know, the system that went down that caused America to freeze for a quarter of a day, and then it lasted a whole day, really, because of the ramifications of it. It's a notification to airmen system. No, but they changed it. Buttigieg changed it to notification to air mission, because they can't say the word man or men in the Air Force. You worried like I am that we're not going to have much of an Air Force if you can't say the word man? I don't know what we're going to have, where these warriors are going to come from to fight and die to preserve America. We all have to be prepared to do that. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the new minority leader of the House, the new Pelosi, has announced, without being asked particularly, that he has full faith and credit. That's like what you say about the money, but that's okay. He has full faith and credit in President Biden, even after the second batch of classified documents were discovered. I don't know about the third and the fourth. But is there a point at which Jeffries starts thinking like an American and not like a Democrat? Want my prediction? No. Air Jordan sneakers have been stolen off the feet of a 16-year-old here in Adams, New York, which is a New York in which, in his first year in office, crime is up over 30%, which is a horrible record for someone who promised when he came into office to bring it down. Kristen Gillibrand is running again for re-election. As I said to Ted, he and I are going to flip a coin. Whoever loses gets to run against it. This is a senator. This is a senator that I don't know what to say other than, you think there'd be anything different at all if we didn't have her? If we didn't pay her salary, we didn't have her. You think there'd be any difference at all? If it just reduced the vote for a majority by half.
Mayor. So, Mayor Pete, a lot of trouble this week with the FAA stuff, right? Biden obviously in hot water here.
Does Mayor Pete, does he work?
Does he know he's heading a cabinet level?
Does he go to work like normal people? Does he actually go? I mean, does he work in any capacity at all?
That's a good question. What has Mayor Pete done as Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation?
He's been behind every major catastrophe. He's been
running planes, automobiles.
He's been running to catch up on every major tragedy, and then
whoa! That's not fair, Mayor. You're forgetting the brave and step he took to rename this NOTAM system to ensure its gender neutral status. This system, this very important system, it used to be called the Notice to Airmen.
Oh, I know. I am not at all minimizing your point, Ted. I think I have to amend what I'm thinking. That was a massive contribution. I'm sure every time they referred to it in the morning as the NOTAM system, everyone became so upset because the word man was used. Now that they say Air Force
and it's getting all this attention now. So the system may have.
You can't say male or female. What do you say? We have a new name for it, like Glabuk.
X. I think you just put the letter X down, right? Okay. Something about the X, right?
So if they ask me, are you a male or a female? And I don't want to give them, I don't want to be pushed around, and I just say X.
I think so. What's this whole, I've seen this Latin X used to be a thing, but nobody takes that seriously outside the woke left. But yeah, I see the letter X in places, right? Male M, female F, and then there's the X. I don't understand it. But despite the system failing, Mayor, the whole thing crashed. But no one's going to be offended. No one is going to be offended because we've taken out male. It's the missions. So
I don't think anybody was offended anyway, except him.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like changing the name of the Washington Redskins. The Native Americans did 80% against it, maybe 85%.
Maybe 85, yeah.
I think more than half the Democratic Party is in favor of changing the name of the Democratic Party. Now that I've pointed out to them,
I think so.
that it's the party of slavery.
I think so. I think they're not all well read, Mayor. So I think for some of them, they're just becoming aware.
They didn't know that because they don't teach them that in school. But now that if you ask the question, what institution had the most to do with slavery of any in the country, you would say the Democrat Party had the most to do with slavery. Number one is keeping it flourishing. Number two, fighting for it and ending up with more Americans dying than any other war. Then resisting the changes for almost 100 years or maybe more after the war, and carrying on with lynchings, record numbers of Black people and Europeans were lynched by the Klan, which was all Democrat Party. In fact, some of them rose to the highest levels of the Democrat Party, and there they became good friends with Joe the racist Biden. You say, why is he a racist? He's a racist because he says things like, America is systemically racist. America is far from being systemically racist. America is about as fair and equal a country as you can find in the world. And not through any good actions of his, but because of his predecessors. But it just completely misreads why 1 million people will try to get in there.
Mayor, we do have some breaking news. I don't want to be the one to deliver this, but Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis Presley, died Thursday after being hospitalized earlier today, according to her mother in a statement. The singer, Lisa Marie Presley, was 54 years old.
The three of us just saw her mother,
and
on Saturday night at Mar-a-Lago, and I thought,
son committed. He looked just like Elvis. He committed suicide a few years ago, so that whole bloodline is wiped out.
The younger, oh, that was her sister. That's right. See, she had a younger woman with her, and I thought it was her daughter. And Maria said,
FAA outage.
We'll get to it. So this is from Priscilla Presley. It is with a heavy heart that I must share the devastating news that my beautiful daughter, Lisa Marie, has left us. She was the most passionate, strong, and loving woman I have ever known. That coming from Priscilla Presley tonight. Again, Lisa Marie Presley, the only child of Elvis Presley, dead at 54.
She seemed to be having such a good time with the president. So Ted and Dr. Maria and I and the Kalem family were at Mar-a-Lago on Saturday night, really to thank them for all the wonderful things they did for Andrew during the campaign and for allowing us to do our podcast there, which I so enjoyed. And she seemed pretty she seemed normal, right? Happy.
That was the mother.
Yeah, the mother. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, she's the one who announced tonight that her daughter died.
Yeah.
And she sat with the president and Melania, I think her sister, and another woman. Pretty sure. And the president played
Skype video.
Because of that. The president played a good many Elvis Presley songs. Well, we extend, and I do this for Ted and for Dr. Maria and our little family here. We extend our love and our support to the Presley family. I don't know the circumstances; they're tragic to lose a child. we'll say a little prayer. Maybe we'll.
Multiple
We're gonna-
reports that she had a cardiac arrest. She suffered from cardiac arrest. Was rushed in the hospital. So it is being described as a heart attack. 50 years old, collapsed in her home.
Oh my goodness. Well, we say a prayer to God for the repose of her soul. That God give her the peace that she so much deserves, as everyone does, and that she live with him in paradise. If you, in your own way, just close your eyes for a moment and just say a prayer for her. Thank you. Well, we're gonna get off a bit early tonight because of that. What you're hearing is Newsmax trying to invade. They're trying to invade us.
Keep swiping you out, so you get out.
So we're going to sign off a little earlier tonight. So we'll stay on a little more tomorrow night because I love this show and I love to get your questions. And pretty soon we're going to figure out how to have some of you call in. You can't let everybody call in because it would be too crazy, but we're going to work that out and we're going to make some changes in the show so that you get more participation. We'll talk to you about that tomorrow night, okay? And maybe, who knows, we may find more classified documents in extraordinarily secure places like Times Square, right?
Newsmax TV.
Joe may have put a few there.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to remind you, as we always do, tomorrow morning when you awake, first thing you say is, thank God I'm in America. And say a little prayer for the Presley family also. God bless you and God bless America.